Okay, class. We're going to be talking about how to answer questions and find answers to support for our answers from the text we're reading. I just wanted to remind you that hope you've taken a close look at this wrap about how to answer questions. You restate the question to make sure that you understand what is being asked, and then you answer the question as you understand it, but you also prove that you're right by including a couple of details from the passage. So you got wrap for restate, A for answer, and P for prove, R-A-P. All right? And then you should also have had an example like this that shows you that you put the question in the answer. Hope you're paying close attention to that, because that's what I'm going to be looking for when I see your answers to these questions this week. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at a book called fOOD, or a story called fOOD. It's on page 2, starts on page 222 in your book, and I'm just going to show you. We're going to read it, and then we're going to answer some questions about it. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I do when I first look at a book. First thing I do is I take a look at the pictures. I see a man here in a white coat that looks like a lab coat, so he looks like he's probably a scientist to me. He's doing something. I can't tell if that's a knife or what, but he's doing something to this wheat plant. Okay, and then I take a look at the title, and it says Food Fight. And when I think of food fight, I think of somebody throwing food at me. But by this next line, it says, "Is it safe to interfere with Mother Nature?" I don't think when I'm seeing somebody throw food or something like that that's interfering with Mother Nature. So I think my idea here is that food fight doesn't mean what I thought it meant. It probably means something to do with Mother Nature. So with that, then I start reading my story. Okay? Hope you can all see this. If you can't, you can follow along while I read on page, this is on page 223, and this is your small book. I like to call it the key book, because at the end of the book it has a key on it. You'll notice that the bigger book has actually something that looks like a lock. Okay? So I'm going to read this story, and I'm going to kind of be asking myself questions as I'm reading to kind of make sure that I'm following along and I'm understanding what it's saying. An incredible thing is happening to our food. Some scientists are using a technique called genetic modification to make superior food crops. It involves altering a seed's genes. Genes are the instruction codes that all living things have inside their cells. A seed's genetic code sets what characteristics it will inherit when it grows into a plant. These could mean how big it will grow and the nutrients it will contain. Okay? For thousands of years, farmers made crops better by crossbreeding plants. How did they crossbreed plants, I might ask myself. I'm hoping this next sentence will help me know, and I think it does. They would add pollen from the sweetest melon plants to the flowers of plants that produced the biggest melons. This would make new plants with big, sweet melons. But this process does not always work. The cycle of crossbreeding can take years to get good results. But advances in gene science have created amazing shortcuts. Using new tools, scientists can put a gene from one living thing into another. That living thing could be a plant, a bacterium, a virus, or even an animal. These foods are called genetically modified foods, or GM foods. So the goal of GM foods is to create foods that can survive insects or harsh conditions, or can grow faster. But are these advancements in agriculture good for us? So it ends with a question. Okay? This story actually goes on to other pages, but I'm just going to focus on this page for right now, and you're going to help me with some answers. Okay, now let's keep in mind that we're going to be using the wrap, right? So what is genetic modification? So as I look at that question, I'm thinking that somebody wants to know what genetic modification is. So in my answer, I need to be able to be telling them what I've learned in the book or what I know about genetic modification. But my answer has to include this question so that people know what I'm talking about. So as I come back in here, I come into the book and I see this, I read this article here. An incredible thing is happening about our foods. Some scientists are using a technique called genetic modification. Oh, there it is. So what is genetic modification? They're trying to make superior food crops. So they're trying to do something to change them to make them superior. Superior is better or greater, okay? It involves altering a seed's genes. Genes are the instruction codes that all living things have inside their cells. So you and I are living things, our cats and dogs, this wheat, trees, all those kinds of things are living things, and we all have cells. We all have instruction codes or genes inside our cells. A seed's genetic code sets what characteristic it will inherit when it grows into a plant. These could mean how big it will grow and the nutrients it will contain. Okay? So I'm going to stop right there because I think I can answer my question here. What is genetic modification? It looks like it is it involves altering a seed's genes. Okay? So in my answer here, in order to answer what genetic modification is, I'm going to start with putting the question in my answer, and I'm going to say genetic modification is, or I'm going to say involves, because I'm going to take it right out of the book, involves altering a seed's genes. A seed's genes. Oh, I can't even spell genes. And it calls the genes instructional codes. Okay, but it's growing it's exchanging them so that the plants can maybe grow bigger or have more nutrients. Genetic modification involves altering a seed's genes to make, I'm going to say, plants better. Okay? And I got that information from inside this paragraph. Okay? So now let's try the next question. What were farmers doing for thousands of years? Okay? Well, I'm in luck because right here the question says, for thousands of years, farmers made crops better by crossbreeding plants. Now, in order to answer this question, I need to find out a little bit more about what they meant by crossbreeding plants. So I keep reading. They would add pollen from the sweetest melon plants to the flowers of plants that produce the biggest melons. So I know that all flowers have pollen, and what they would do, they would take the pollen from plants that had really sweet melons and add them to the plants that had the biggest melons, and this would make new plants with big sweet melons. So all of a sudden, instead of having small melons that are sweet, you can use the pollen to make plants that have big melons that are sweet. But this process does not always work. The cycle of crossbreeding can take years to get good results. Okay? So in answering this question, what were farmers doing for thousands of years? I'm going to put my question in my answer. So I'm going to say, for thousands of years, farmers were What'd they say? They were crossbreeding plants. Were cross, and I'm getting that right out of the book, breeding plants by putting the pollen from one plant to another to make better plants. And I'm able to say that because in my mind a melon that's bigger and sweeter is better than one that's smaller and sweeter. Okay, so I put that kind of in my own words, but notice that I put the question in my answer. So if someone were to come and the only thing they could see was my answer, they could almost guess what the question was by how I put the answer. Okay, now I've showed you how to do it a couple times. I'm going to give you a chance to practice with this. Okay, so the question I want you to take a look at is, what does the author mean by GM foods? Now I want you to pause this video, and then when you're done with your answer and you've written an answer with the question in the answer, we'll take a look at it and see what you've done. So go ahead and pause the video, read about what the author calls GM foods. I'll give you a hint, it's in the last paragraph. Read that last paragraph and tell us what the author means by GM foods. Go ahead and pause it. Okay, class, hopefully you've taken the time to write the answer to this question, and hopefully your answer will look very similar to mine. It doesn't have to look exactly like that, but notice that the question is, what does the author mean by GM foods? And my answer is, with that question in my answer, the author calls genetically modified foods GM foods for short. Okay, so that answers the question. What are GM foods? They're genetically modified foods, and you can see what the answer is, and you can see the question is in the answer. So we'll be doing some more of these today, so remember to keep that in mind. Keep the RI.4.1 in mind, that we restate the question, answer the question, share your opinion of the knowledge, and then prove you're right by using some details. If you use one or two details, that's fine. That's kind of what we practiced here. All right? Okay.